So I decided to try to do bouquet a few years back, and I was playing around with it with this snowman, and I didn't like how it turned out. So I didn't actually. I don't even know where the recorded lesson is. It disappeared. So we're gonna give it a shot again. Maybe add a little more color to it, a little more excitement. I'm doing a half sheet this time, so 4.5 by 6, right? Nice card size. But you could do the 9 by 12. Obviously, you can do it any size you want. I'm using a mop to wet my background. I don't want it soaked, but it needs to be wet for it to flow, because I'm going to add quite a bit of color into this background, the sky, because I want to do some bouquet, and bouquet requires a darker background in order to lift the color off. And what I'm using, by the way, besides brushes, this one is obviously shedding a little bit. What I'm using besides brushes is I have a stencil, circle stencil. Now, you can use a lot of different things, but this is just very convenient, this circle stencil. I got it at Hobby Lobby. That was a few bucks. I love it for bouquet because you need various sizes when you do bouquet. It's got to have a variety of size if you're going to pretend it's some kind of a reflection from the light, you know. So while this is wet, I'm going to use, it could be a flat. I just happen to have an angled. I like the way an angle can dip into corners. I've got Prussian blue. I've got indigo, which I love. I've got some Payne's gray, and I'll be using those in the sky. And I'll put a little bit of this red in. I think this is Quin red. Couldn't swear to it, but I think that's Quin red. If not, any bright red that you have, like a Windsor red or medium red, anything like that. It can be flexible. It doesn't have to be exact. Now, I love my indigo, and it is a little darker. So while this is wet, wow, I love that color. I'm going to put in my darker areas. I want to fill it in because I'm doing the bouquet. I don't want to have empty spots. Like sometimes in watercolor, you might want some empty space because it's interesting and whatnot, but this time we're not, because we are doing the bouquet and we need to have nice dark areas to pull from. Let's throw in a little red while we're thinking about it. Oh yeah, that's pretty. Might be a little too much red, but that's okay. Make it work for us. This side started drying a little bit while I was chit-chatting. Go into our blues again. Now this is going to dry considerably lighter, which we want it to do, because in order to have these little bouquet in it, it's supposed to be daylight, right? So we need it to be a little bit lighter. That's why I'm pulling a little color off of it. But just remember, this is going to dry way lighter. It is watercolor, and they do that. I think that's going to be just fine. Now, I'll take a little bit of those same colors and put it down below, excuse me, in our background. Actually, I want to wipe that off because that's my top of my hill, and I don't want that to be dark. I want that light. So the Payne's gray and some of these darker colors, they need to be on the back side of my hill in the shadow area. Take a wet brush and soften the top of it so it melts. You can do a little bit of side brush if you use the side of your brush a little bit. You can create some neat, just shadow effects that give you darks and lights, which is important when you've got a scene where the sun is shining. You want some nice distinct darks against your lights. I'm going to smooth some of that and leave some of it rough. But I do have to have a little color around my snowman so that he stands out, right? So it's got to have some color around him. Okay, down below there's a little shadow. A little darker as it's closer to his little snowman body. And then down here we could have a little dark area. We had a little bit of that red and blue. Make a bit of a violet like we did in our original picture, had some violet in it. Whoa! Yeah, that's bright. But you know what? It's reflecting from the sky right above it, so it works for me. Add a little blue so that that's a little more on the violet side. Reason I've got a little bit of darks up here in the snow is because we're going to do bokeh through the whole picture. It's not going to be just in the sky. Otherwise, it'll just look like giant snowflakes, you know. So if you want it to look like bokeh reflections, you're going to have a little bit of color in your snow. Softening those edges. Rough edge at the top where you want the highlight hitting the snow. Soft edge where the background is going up. Because these guys are way back there. I'm going to smooth that edge a little bit. Because before it dries completely, I'm going to put some trees in it. So I'm going to switch to my little brush. And I'm going to grab some perylene green and a little bit of this blue that I've got, just so it's tying into my background. And let's see if it's too wet or not. Yeah, that's probably a little too wet. But I can go ahead and get this little bit of this background done against the snow. And if it's coming down too far, just dry it. See? That keeps it from bleeding forward more because you just dry the little area you didn't want it to come into. That allows you to put a little more of your dark color in there without worrying too much about it coming down into your snow. This side is dry enough. I think we can put a few little trees in here. That's a little too bluish. It's distant trees, so we want it a little darker. See how I instantly tried to make those all evenly. 1, 2, 3. That's why I had to throw one in the middle. The brain just wants to make things even. I don't know why. It just does. I'm cleaning my brush out just a little bit so that when I come back here and do my little tree shapes, doing pines. Now that's pretty cool, but I actually don't want that right now. When you're doing pines, if you spritz on it, it sort of makes some really cool looking pine needle shapes, and that's why I did that. I learned that from an artist, David R. Smith. He's a very good artist, and I learned that from watching his tutorials and taking class. You can throw a couple of things up in the foreground just to make it interesting. That side is dry enough now that I think we can, we got a bit of a cauliflower right there where the water sat. And although that looks cool, it probably won't fit our background, but I'm just going to put a a bouquet there, so it'll cover it. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's go back over here. I'm going to have a couple bigger trees over here. Maybe he comes down to the bottom. I think I want to wait till this dries for a minute to do this tree, because I actually want it to bleed into the background a little bit. And if I spray the background right now, it's actually going to create white dots in my entire sky, which will sort of ruin our bouquet effect. So while I'm waiting on that to dry completely so that I can spritz it, we can go ahead and switch to a bigger brush and maybe put his shadows on. This is a number 8 round. And we do not want green. We want Payne's Gray. Just going to put some shadows around our little snowman here. If you put a slightly darker color towards the bottom, like I'm doing right here, you could throw a little bit of the blue in because he's probably reflecting his surroundings, right? Snow sparkles. Then you take a wet brush, you come up right up to that edge, and it will help that just sort of bleed out into your white area, bleed out your shadows. I didn't quite touch it, so I'm going to go over it. There we go. And then soften that edge. There we go. I'm doing the same for his face. Whoa, that's dark. Definitely softening that out real fast before it goes crazy on me and sticks. Payne's Gray does lift pretty well. Some colors don't lift very well. Once you get them on there, you're like, oh dear, I can't do anything about that now. But Payne's Gray really does lift pretty well. I dropped a drop of water in there and started making a cauliflower, so I had to stop it. I dropped a droplet of water with my brush there and I started making a cauliflower, so I had to clean it up real quick. Same thing here, maybe just a touch of blue, not much. And then we don't smooth the edges for the shadow under the hat, but we do smooth the edges in here because we want the shadow on the face to sort of have a soft edge to it. Okay. I was going to put a little bird in his hand. I know I did a snowman with a little bird the other day, but sometimes it's just so stinking cute. You just want to do it, right? I just might do it again. I'm going to add just a little bit of pink into him right here. And never the slightest touch of pink into his cheeks. While it's still wet, it will sort of bleed out a little bit, so it'll be really smooth. There we go. Looks warm. Warm and cuddly. I think we'll save that scarf for the end, but I could probably do his buttons. They're little drops of coal, so they don't have to be perfectly round or anything. They're made out of little rocks or coal or something. I'm not going to do his arms because they would be going into the sky. I do think I'm going to go blow dry this just so it's completely dry and I don't have to worry about whether my spritzing for my trees is going to get into that background. Okay, I blow dried it really well. Now what I want to do for my trees to be fuzzy but not get into the background is I'm going to spritz my color on there. Okay, while it's still wet, I'm going to come in here and just put some branches back and forth. That's not wet enough. We're going to dribble again. If you get it too wet, it's just going to be a big mess. But if you get it somewhere in the middle, it works great. Where it's got some droplets to take your water out and appear to be smaller branches and twigs, but it's not soaked. It works better with a bigger squirt bottle than this little one. The little ones make really, really fine spray. The bigger bottles make bigger droplets, but I couldn't find my bigger bottle at the moment. I think you can start to see the movement a little bit now from the spritzing water, even though it took me quite a few spritzes. And down here at the bottom, I'm just going to sort of blend him down. Not necessarily worrying about any detail down at the bottom where he meets the snow. It might be wet enough to do another one, I don't know. Evidently not, because it ain't doing anything. Excuse me, it's not doing anything. Aunt Mary would have a fit. I said 8. I'm just playing with it a little bit. Don't worry about getting too detailed, but maybe these guys are a little bit fat. Thin out a few smaller branches coming out of those. And then 1, 2. We can do a couple smaller, distant trees back in the back, sort of a, just to give something for our bouquet to be against. See, again, I was just trying to do them all the same size. I just gotta quit doing that. Spritzing that water on them not only gives them some texture, okay, but it also smooths those edges so that they look like they're way back in the distance like that, which is exactly what I wanted. And then I can dry up the front, keep it from bleeding forward. A little something behind him just to help him stand out better. Okay, and these guys right here need a little help. Okay, background's done. I'm going to take a little of this violet-y color that we made and add a little violet right here. just think being so close to that sky, it needs to have a little more of the red tones in it. There we go. So it's reflecting from up there. Okay, while we're waiting on that to dry, we can work on his face because that's dry now. Now, if you have any difficulty with the details on the eyes, you can just use a very fine marker, extra fine Sharpie, and go around his eyes. I guess we are going to put a bird in his hand because now I've put his eyes looking to the left, so he's got to be looking at something, right? Cute little eyebrows because he's interested. Okay, I went ahead and did his mouth just so that it wouldn't be wouldn't have to worry about it with a paintbrush. This stuff, this Sharpie stuff, I mean, you give it just a few minutes and you can paint right over it and it won't get fuzzy on you or anything. Thinking his hat should be pretty much black. So I'm using Payne's Gray, which is what I use as black. I don't like black. He's got sort of a, I don't know, almost a red skeleton type hat. It's sort of beat up a little bit. Okay, now you can lift out some shadows in the hat so that as it dries, it's got some built-in highlights, right? It's the nice thing about using good paper. You can practice on cheap paper, but it's, I mean, you know, I say it's good to practice on cheap paper, but you know what? It works so differently than good paper. And really, the Fabriano is not that expensive. There is a fluid paper, Fluid, that they have at Jerry's. Now, I don't like their cheap one, but they do have a cotton one that's 100% cotton, and it's pretty good for playing around on. It doesn't have as much sizing, and sizing is what lets the color linger before getting soaked into the page. And the sizing will allow it to just sit there for a bit, and so the colors will blend beautifully and do all kinds of cool things. When you don't have sizing, not only can you not lift, but your colors don't have time to blend and make wonderful watercolor shapes and surprises for you. I think my sky might, nope, that's dry enough. I can do his scarf. Let's just go ahead and tackle that scarf. I can lift and I can shadow, so I'm not too worried about it being solid right now. It does look kind of weird right there, but it's watercolor paper, so I can just loosen up the background right there, and it'll turn it into a shadow for us. I threw just a little yellow in here just because this is a kind of a magenta color and it's just a little too, it's just not reddish enough. So I helped it to warm up just a hair. A little bit of yellow warmed it up nicely. And I'm going to actually dip into a little Payne's Gray and let it run in down here at the bottom. I can add some more shadow later. But right now, while it's wet, I want it to have a smooth shadow, and it will blend just a little bit because it's a little bit wet. Let's put some shadow right in there while it's wet. Okay, I just forgot to turn the recording back on, but I just put in his nose. I just mixed a little red with yellow just so that we would have some orange, because that's how you make orange. Now I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes and dry before we come back and do anything else. I'm going to grab a little bit of bleed proof white. Because he really does need a little bird that he's holding up in his little hand and looking at. So we're just going to do a little shape of a bird right here, which is basically tail up, head, circle, kind of a smiley face for his bottom. I'm doing white first because if I try to paint this a red cardinal, it's just going to be too dark against the gray. So I have to whiten it up a little bit first. Okay. And there he is. Okay. Put a little shadow under his scarf there since this is supposed to have some sunbeams in the picture. And a little shadow under the scarf too. Well, we've got the white out. We could put little stripes on his scarf like I did the old one. You can put a few little highlights here and there as well. He has a little snow on his hat. Okay, we'll do his arms after the bouquet. In the meantime, we want to darken areas that need a little darkening. Remember, if the sun is bright, shadows have to be pretty dark. It's probably a little too dark, but I'm going to add water under it, so it'll be all right by the time I do that. use my bigger brush to wet under it. Let it flow out. Okay, this is dry enough. I can start doing some bouquet. Now there are a couple of ways that you can do that. You can use your brush and go in circles, which is all right, but I find that it's leaves a little too messy of a background. See how those edges, it's got a lot of edges. You have to wipe it real quick before the edges make a mess, and plus it wets your stencil pretty well. That looks like a moon. So you could stop right there if you just like the moon and say, hey, I've got a moon picture. And then if we want it to be, remember to alternate where they are. Notice that I'm not trying to wipe these out so that they are perfectly round, okay? We don't want that. I'll do a bigger one right next to them. Sometimes they overlap each other. And sometimes you have there's a part of the picture that you don't like. This is where you get to play and fix it. Like that area where I said it got a little weird. Now some of that might look like distant trees, so I just might leave that. Every now and then wipe your stencil because it sometimes will get some paint on it, especially when you're going over the snow. You might wind up making a mess on your snow. Let's do that one there. Two small ones right here. Take one off the edge. Don't remove any places that you really like the way they turned out, okay? You just really want to preserve if something turned out really nice and you're like, oh, I like that. That looks cool. And sometimes you're supposed to actually come into your design a little bit. So we're going to do that on his hat with one right there. Because it's supposed to look like the image always goes over the picture, right? Or the reflections, they go over the picture. This needs to be a little bit wider. Scrub it a little bit more. A couple down here. And a couple in here. Probably need another one of this tree just to even it out. Now, some people like to put some color in their bouquet spots, and that's perfectly fine. You can do that. But usually the color that's left back there works pretty well because it doesn't always come up completely. And so that little bit of color that's left, I think, does a good job of creating, leaving your effect for you. Now you can add snow like I did on the other one. You can see that I added snow too, but I thought the snow in the bouquet was a bit much. So I didn't do that this time. Let's do a little red cardinal. And let's go ahead and put his arms in, which you can also use that marker for, but I like them a little fatter. And in order for the arms to be a little bit fatter, it's easier to use a brush. See, this arm is coming out right about there. These are twigs. Don't try to make them perfect. They're supposed to be twigs, right? He looks like he's holding the moon in his hand. That turned out pretty cool. It's not Halloween, okay? Scrawny little finger holding the moon. Okay, now we can come put a little highlight in our little bird, and that'll help him stand out. It's his little wings. Just a little highlight where the sun might be hitting his head, or the moon, or whatever's creating our reflections. And then we're going to put a little snow on our branches. I might have to wait till that dries a little better, but I think that makes them stand out better. Doing a little dry brushing with while I got that white on there. It's a great way to put in little highlights that are subtle, but the eye catches them. And you can even put a little snow on your trees if you want. I'm not deciding whether I really want that or not, but I guess I do because I'm doing it. I'm dry brushing this on because I don't want it to be too obvious. I just want a little hint that there's just a tiny bit of snow stuck on the trees. They're not totally covered. And this dry brush technique lets you sort of hint at something without completely committing to it, so to speak. It can be hard on brushes though, so if you have a very expensive brush, you don't want to use it for dry brushing because it does sort of tear up the brushes, rubbing against the paper. I think we're good other than maybe just a touch of shadow under this scarf right there. Soften the edge with water. There we go. Just darkening the shadow right under his hat so that it sends it back just a little. There we go, that looks better. And our little dude needs a beak. Not sure what color cardinal beaks are. I think they're usually kind of grayish, but in order for it to be visible, probably need it to be a little bit dark. In Argentina, the cardinals, we never had, like, they weren't red. They were gray, and they had a little red head on them. You know, the top of their head was red, but the rest of them was gray and white. I was when we came to the States and I saw the bright red. I'm like, oh wow, I like that. Those are really pretty. Okay, so I thought Quinn red was what I had in my tray. I'm gonna grab some straight Quinn red out of the tube and make sure this little dude is standing out. I can add a little bit to my scarf if I want. I think I had some kind of magenta in that tray rather than a Quinn red, so I think for a snowman, Quinn red is just a much nicer, brighter color. I'm going to put a couple little bright highlights in his eyes. Because even though I left a little white when I used that marker, it didn't quite leave enough of a highlight, I don't think, so that's better. I think contrast-wise, we still need it a little darker down here. Just some little last minute touch-ups there. And I just wanted a little more darkness in the snow so that I could put a couple little more bouquet effects in there. Just cleaning up where I spilled down that a little bit. And I am going to define around his body just a little bit. See that droplet stuck on my brush? That happens a lot. And if you don't wipe it off, it's going to come drop on your paper and make a nice big blob. So remember when you rinse your brush to watch out for those little attack droplets. Probably dry enough to do our bouquet. Here's a little quick tip. If you've already painted it once and it dried and you decided to overshadow something else, it doesn't lift as well because you've essentially sealed it by wiping up a little bit before and then coming back and painting some more. So see how it didn't lift because I'd already painted like 2 or 3 layers on top of it. Your best chance for lifting is when you are going over your very first layer. That didn't make a very good circle because it was a little too damp. I'm going to dry my brush just a little bit and try it again. There we go. So you can paint it in with your white. See, it is possible to do that. You can put nice little thicker edges on it if you want to. But it just doesn't lift out as well once you've painted multiple layers on top. Some people don't even use the stencils. They just make circles like this with their brush. But most folks don't have that control to have it look anything near to a circle. So if you're like most folks, that's pretty hard to do. But if this one didn't clean out quite enough to be visible, with a little white paint on your brush, you can sort of help that along. I think that looks better. There we go. Now I think we can call it done. Everything's fixed. Everything's patched. So I hope you enjoyed this. Come back tomorrow. We'll do something else fun. Probably a little simpler. Bye-bye.